If you've ever tried to figure out Ithaca's snow season parking rules, you may have found yourself scratching your head. Mayor Svante Myrick himself has called the rules, quote, confusing, inconvenient, costly, and deeply unpopular with parkers. So, in an effort to develop new, less confusing parking regulations, last year the mayor created a parking task force. And here to talk about the task force and how their work has gone and been received so far is Chief of Staff for the City of Ithaca, Kevin Sutherland. Kevin, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Samuel.
So just to get us started, I'm wondering if you can describe for us the current odd-even snow season parking rules in Ithaca.
Well, I'll try to do my best, but I'm always confused myself. But basically, currently, for 6 months out of the year, November 1st through April 1st, we have a odd-even requirement in the city. So on certain days, you are only allowed to park on one side of the street, and it depends on which day of the week it is. And I believe it's the morning of that you're not supposed to park on. Oh my goodness, I can't even do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of the reason why the mayor asked me to take this on, is to explain odd-even parking to newcomers to our community is very confusing. I know a lot of other communities in the snow belt have similar like rules, and they do their best to explain it in different ways, including putting signs in the streets. We only have a sign as you enter the city. So as you're paying attention to the speed limit change, you should also pay attention to the sign that says that identifies this particular rule.
And I'm just wondering, how long have these been around, and what's the real kind of aim of these rules in the first place? Kind of what are they intended to do?
So I don't know the exact history of the city of Ithaca's odd-even requirements, and I know there's plenty of people in the community who have been here through every iteration of it. But the idea is to, one, allow DPW staff to clear snow in the wintertime. But another thing that isn't always identified is that also allows us to clean the streets, especially in the fall before the snow hits. Our crews are out there trying to hit up against the curb, cleaning up all the loose leaves. And then in the spring, once the odd even is over, we have to go out and physically put signs into the streets to identify where we're coming through with the street cleaners in order to do that continued spring maintenance.
You know, I understand just from talking to you already and from living through them myself that these parking rules can be kind of confusing. I'm wondering, though, maybe what forced the city to say, hey, we need to rethink these rules?
Well, I believe when the mayor ran for office and he went door to door, this was one of the big issues that people complained about. Why do I have to move my car every day for 6 months when there may or may not be snow? Public perception is not that, oh, wait, there are DPW crews that need to take care of the streets, but it's also an issue of convenience for residents. I mean, it's 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning when this is in effect. But that doesn't mean our crews are able to get in there and get everything taken care of in that short time frame. So it isn't as efficient as it could be.
So I understand this was back in December, correct, that you were kind of chosen to head up this new parking task force?
I actually got hired in December, and this was one of the first things that the mayor asked me to take on.
Okay, and maybe just to take us from that point in December to where we are now, what kind of work did the task force do to come out with their alternative plan?
So the task force met a handful of times and had some email communications, but basically we looked at what other communities do to deal with snow. We met with and spoke to folks in the DPW department to find out exactly what their needs are. We met with organizations that deal with this on a regular basis, and we came up with basically our own internal criteria as to, all right, what are we looking for? What do we hope to get? And this kind of just melded together over the course of those conversations.
And I'm wondering if you can lay out for us the main points of this plan that the task force has come up with at this point.
Sure. So it's kind of a multi-phase thing, and the ordinance would only focus on the ordinance we're talking about in the next couple of weeks or months is the phase one, which is the removal of odd-even parking regulation. So there would no longer be 6 months out of the year parking on, changing from side to side every night. Instead, once a week on any given street, there would be no parking from 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. And this would be year-round. and that would mean that about 1/5 of the street from those 12 hours would be closed to parking. Also, during major snow events, the mayor or the superintendent of public works could declare a parking ban on all major arterial roads and Ithaca's steepest streets. So this would, create a little more focus on where snowplows would be. So the snowplows would start with those major snow roads and then move into those neighborhoods that have no parking, those streets with no parking, and then focus on the streets that cars are on. I mean, obviously, we'd also try to encourage people to park in the parking garages if there's a major snow event, so we'd have a parking discount. But this would also require a major sign overhaul for the city. So that's what we would look to do is, get away from the signs that just when you drive into the city, you see a sign, and you have to remember that that's the rule, and it would actually be there right when you get out of your car. You'd see, oh, wait, this street I can park on today. Tomorrow, maybe not.
And you mentioned that the parking task force had a number of criteria that they were thinking about when developing this new plan. So what would you say kind of makes this plan preferable to the current system?
Well, two reasons, and primarily it would actually reduce the number of times somebody has to drive their car. While there is a 24-hour citywide parking regulation, everybody has to move their car anyway. Our recommendation would be, okay, let's also address that at some point down the line. But right now, let's just get people not having to move their car back and forth every day. Let's have them only move their car once a week. This would also allow DPW staff to schedule street work with less disruption.
So I understand that when this plan was shared with the community, there were some members of the community who raised some concerns. One of them was that, hey, if you've been an Ithaca resident for a number of years, it may be kind of annoying to move your car, but at least this is the current system and you understand it kind of how it is today. So I'm kind of wondering what your response would be to that criticism.
Folks are uncomfortable with change. Everybody is uncomfortable with change. But I truly believe that the recommendation that the task force came up with is the best solution going forward. So yes, it will take a little bit of getting used to, but I think overall we'll be able to provide more parking spots in the city under this rule than during those 6 months where you can only park on one side or the other.
And one of the other responses was that, hey, this is just a way for the city to take better advantage of the Department of Public Works, which has, experienced some decreases in their workforce. The people who would then raise these comments said, maybe this is a question about what the DPW really can do in building their resources as opposed to overhauling parking across the city. So I'm wondering what your response to that would be.
Well, so when we first mentioned that we'd like to look at getting rid of odd-even parking to the Assistant Superintendent of Public Works, his reaction was not very happy about it. But as we discussed this, he's actually believes that this is a good solution. Yes, DPW crews have gotten smaller, and we have to find more ways to be efficient in our utilization of those staff. The other option is we hire more people, but that means a property tax increase, and taxes are high enough as they already. I don't believe that that's the right answer. I believe that we can become more efficient in making some changes across the community.
And, I understand that with a change to a new system like this, there's, of course, going to be a period during which people kind of have to adapt to the new rules. I can personally imagine that's going to be an increase in parking ticket revenue for the city. But if the task force is successful in getting this plan pushed through and makes a system that is, in essence, easier for, citizens of Ithaca to understand, isn't the task force kind of cutting out a potential source of revenue in the traffic ticket revenue that the city is getting, right? An easier system that's easier for people to understand eventually is going to result in less revenue for the city.
I believe that's the case. I think that, right now we average about $100,000 in odd-even tickets. $100,000 a year in odd-even tickets. Under this new rule, you might see an increase initially as people get used to it, and then you're going to see that start to trail off. But I would hope that we don't try to run government in a way that generates tickets. I guess our goal is to get everybody to comply, and we're in a better place. This will mean that we can be more efficient about patrolling 1/5 of the city rather than the whole city, which we can't do efficiently now. So if we're patrolling only 1/5 of the city at any given time, we'll be able to catch those cars that are out of compliance, and hopefully they'll learn after 1 or 2 tickets.
And one other thing I wanted to ask you about was this special provision in the plan that would allow the superintendent of the Department of Public Works or the mayor to impose a kind of weather-impacted parking ban. I'm wondering where the task force would have people park if they were being told not to park on the streets, and also how a ban like that would be communicated to the public.
Well, I like that weather-impacted ban because it could not just be a snow event. It could be a major flooding issue or something along those lines. Yeah, one of the things we're trying to do is say to folks, look, we have room in our parking garages. Let's utilize it. We put a discount on that parking. We'll figure out what the reserve rate is, but that would be one way to try to help with this. But also, there are plenty of other streets. I mean, if it got so bad, the mayor or the superintendent could say that, except for, ignore the parking except for the snow emergency routes, giving people enough places to park their cars while we try to clean up the situation. The way to communicate, I mean, we're in a different place than we were when Odd Even was initially put into place. We have social media. We're good about communicating with our partners in the media, and I think we can get the message out there. The last piece is we have started to implement our license plate reader system, and that's mostly right now for the downtown area, where we can check to make sure people have moved their car when they're supposed to based on the signs that are downtown, as well as the meter spots. We could utilize that in the neighborhoods too to let people know that they need to move their car during a snow event. It would be a voluntary sign up. You'd fill in your phone number that you want us to contact you. We'd robocall you and tell you, please move your car within the next half an hour or hour before we come down the street and plow here.
Mm-hmm. So understanding that this plan was shared with the community last month, I understand that the task force is back in discussions. So I'm wondering where the task force is now with their plan.
Well, we met last Thursday, and in terms of what we've discussed, a lot had to do with concerns that were raised by the 20 or so members of the community who came out to the forums. Specifically, one of the issues was, why don't we just focus on developing residential parking spaces or parking permits? And that would require state law changes. And so we kind of suggested that that's something we discuss above and beyond the odd even parking / one street, 1 day a week. Another thing we talked about was potentially starting up a pilot of this. However, the mayor doesn't necessarily believe that that's the best option. I think that the goal is to try to get this through as is, or a few revisions along the way, and we're going to bring this to the Board of Public Works at the end of the month, and to City Administration in August, and back to Council in September.
Well, I have been speaking with Kevin Sutherland. He is the Chief of Staff for the City of Ithaca and the head of the city's Parking Task Force. Kevin, thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you, Samuel. Have a great day.